Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you could tell, we'll be talking about the growing potential for a snowstorm slash winter storm. Now I want to say right off the bat that even if this thing does occur, which at this point I do want to say that as indicated by the title, it's still just a potential. It's kind of a threat. It's not really a I wouldn't even say it's a likelihood. It's just, again, a potential, even though it's really not that far out. It's within the next 5 days. It's kind of a unique dynamics setup across United States, and whether or not it occurs is a bit of a question. There are some models that are very consistently showing it. There are some that completely don't. So definitely an interesting scenario, but even if it does occur, it's not going to be a massive one. It's not going to be a huge one, but it could drop decent amounts of snow. Now, you may be wondering, okay, where will this occur if it does occur? And right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that if the snow does fall, it's going to affect areas across Wyoming, potentially Nebraska, and, this could affect as far east as really even Lincoln, with some snow into Kansas, Colorado, and potentially the panhandles of both Oklahoma, Texas, and the portions of especially northeastern New Mexico. So before we get into this and start talking more about this, I do want to say that if you guys are a weather enthusiast, weather hobbyist, and at any point you do enjoy this video, consider subscribing. Obviously, don't do it yet if you don't know, right? I'm just reminding you to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, as it's a great way to support the channel. Hitting the like button also does the very same thing. It helps out. And if you have any comments, concerns, questions, please leave them down below, as it's really, again, I get to most questions. The last 2 days I think I've been slacking a bit, but I'll try responding to most of them today. Okay, guys, let's start talking about this. So first off, I want to show you the GFS. Now, here's a warning, right? The GFS is not excited about this snowstorm. It's honestly, if you were to just look at the GFS, you would be basically like, there's not even a threat for it. And let me show you. So what we're kind of looking at is this storm to collide with this cold air mass that is coming down. I mean, it won't really collide. This system will ride along this eastern side of this trough, and that digs a lot of cold air back into the United States. And along that kind of cold air on the western side, so not the eastern side, but the opposite side, there could be a little bit of some precipitation, and there could be a low pressure that develops, and that could again be dropping that snow across the semi-mountainous and semi-plains area, like the extreme western plains of Kansas, again, Nebraska, and into eastern Colorado and eastern Wyoming. So it's not gonna be a massive one, but it definitely is a kind of a unique situation. So we'll have to see this. Notice there's our system. You can see it blossoms into the northeast. As I mentioned, it kind of rides along the eastern flank of this cold trough, kind of making it drive a bit further towards the south, and it kind of prevents it from just steering off towards the east with no resistance. It's forced to dig itself a bit further towards the west. Now notice, this is where we're looking at, right there, that region of the Pacific. Notice the GFS, again, it shows barely anything, and this would be now into Monday, and 7 a.m. Monday, November 1st, the day after Halloween, obviously October 31st. There's not much, and this isn't really much of a snowstorm. And yes, there will be, I guess, a snow chance across central Canada, but that won't really be affecting much of the viewing area whatsoever, so I'm not really going to be talking about that. But yes, that's going to be kind of the culprit as to why some of those cool temperatures are going to be coming down so far to the south. It's because of the snowstorm, and because of obviously colliding with that cool air mass, making kind of a perfect situation for a relatively chillier air mass to drop down pretty far to the south at a pretty stubbornly slow pace. Going back to that system, look across Nebraska, Kansas. I mean, the GFS, that's all it shows. It does develop some precip across Oklahoma, Kansas, but it just doesn't do anything with it. And that's why it's such a big difference, because if a scenario like this were to occur, that's not a snowstorm, and nothing's gonna really result of that. And I want to show you that. Look what the GFS does. It continues this thing, right? Continues showing it across the south, boom, into the northeast, and it's done. And that's over. That's the snowstorm potential right there. That little system, which kind of drags precipitation from the Pacific and a bit from, again, maybe some of the Gulf of Mexico. It's pretty unenthusiastic. Again, I'm not even going to show you the snowfall totals because there really isn't any. So I may be looking at that and being like, oh, well, wow, you're really dragging it out far to say that this thing may be a snowstorm. And I'm just going to show you the difference between, the models. It's large. It's definitely larger than I would like. It's kind of uncomforting to see this because, I mean, goodness, we don't really know which one's more accurate at this point. I would lean towards the snowstorm, which is why I'm saying the chances are growing because more models show it rather than those that don't. But as you saw, it's not that the GFS shows a weaker storm or a weaker snowstorm. I mean, it shows literally nothing, just a bit of rain. So it's quite a difference. I mean, that doesn't happen. I mean, it does happen frequently when they disagree, except it's just never nice when they don't. It's always something that's a bit tough, and especially 120 hours out when this system could be occurring. That's even less, 80, 90 hours. That is not far. So it just goes to show you how really, we don't really know what's going on in the next 90 hours, 80 hours, right? That could mean a foot of snow for northeastern Colorado versus nothing. So the pattern overall in the long term is also obviously even harder to predict. So let's go through this. Canadian, this is a different model. Notice it does show that cold air mass right there. Boom. It does show that system riding along the eastern flank of it, and it does show that snow right away. This is 7 a.m. Monday. It's already more explosive than what the GFS shows. Again, it's not going to be a massive system, but it's there. You can see Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming seeing some snow. And now this does drag down further to the south, and it kind of dwindles. But look, we see a robust kind of development of precipitation. And look, from that little Pacific moisture, where we do see more snow develop across the similar areas, but further towards the south, again, into Oklahoma, or of Kansas, Texas Panhandle. Look, that's relatively impressive. I mean, yes, it's more of a snow system, not even snowstorm because of how small it is, but, for how inactive this fall has been so far with, the lack of winter storms, it's still probably going to be the biggest event. And notice it goes down pretty far to the south, maybe even across again the Panhandle of Texas, maybe across the Appalachians. And look, the Canadian does drag that up way closer towards the northeast, so we'll have to watch that as well. And yes, and again, the more cold air kind of following that air mass. So yeah, if we were to take a look at this now, the snowfall totals obviously will be a lot higher from the Canadian. I mean, really, they're going to be present at least. The GFS doesn't even show low snowfall amounts. It really shows nothing. Let me just show you since I didn't show them. I mean, that's nothing, literally. A trace anywhere else, it's the higher elevations, the extreme higher elevations. So Canadian, it's a completely different story, and it just goes to show you how much of a difference that is. And the places where the GFS showed some snow, the Canadian shows up to 2 feet of it, a lot more, and it brings that snow into potentially North Platte, large cities, maybe Wichita. Wichita maybe getting in on some of that. Oklahoma City around the cusp of maybe some snowflakes, but again, it's more in the panhandles and towards the mountains of that into northeastern New Mexico as well. A decent event, and look, it does show some snow across the northeast. There are certain models that develop a rather interesting storm out of this. Maybe not a nor'easter, but close to a nor'easter. And I do want to say that the lakes, according to the Canadian, there could be some decent lake effect. Nothing historic, but a decent event for it being early November, though it doesn't seem it will be anything like the November in 2014. I think that was when Buffalo saw triple-digit snowfall amounts in some areas, right? It doesn't seem like a repeat of that, but definitely decent amounts potentially. So again, 2 completely different models showing 2 completely different things. Regarding the high-res models, since this isn't far out, they do start showing some of the development, but it's only through Tuesday, right? And if you recall, the Canadian doesn't show much across, it shows the snow through the Tuesday time frame, but look, much of the snow across the south doesn't develop till Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So the NAM 12 km definitely is way more aggressive than the GFS. I would say it's more aggressive than the Canadian. So at least, again, more models do show something than not. I wanted to show this, not the precipitation forecast, as that's kind of useless. But let's take a look at that. Again, we have that system riding up the northeast, bringing that cool air down, kind of shoving it more towards the south and west. Look, we see snow affecting much of Nebraska. Again, potentially getting snowflakes all the way to Lincoln, maybe even Omaha, southern Iowa right there. And notice that it does show that snow. It dwindles, which the Canadian showed as well, if you recall. And then around that Tuesday, Wednesday time frame, it showed that second burst, but the NAM doesn't go out far enough. The RGEM, it's another model that goes out to 84 hours. It is, again, only out to 84, but let's take a look at what snowfall it shows, and you can see it's also pretty decent. It's not a, you know, it's not amazing, I guess, if you will, but it's way higher than what the GFS shows, and it's worthy to call a snowstorm. And I'm curious to see what they would show kind of in the second phase of the system. And there may be even a third phase to this storm, but I'm not talking about it much because it's still rather unlikely, and that third phase would be potentially across the Northeast. And again, I'm not going to talk about specific timing across the Northeast or the Appalachians, as you saw the Canadian did show some snow, because that's too big of a maybe, too big of a what if. I will say that if you do live across these areas right here, and that includes you into Oklahoma, Texas, panhandles, into potentially, again, western Kansas, western Nebraska, eastern Wyoming, northeastern, really just eastern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico, this will be occurring the early part of next week, so it's not far out, right? So that's why it's a bit of a tricky situation. I don't know if there will be winter storm warnings issued. Honestly, it seems a bit of an aggressive thing to be issued. But, you know, I mean, if a scenario that's more aggressive comes to reality, which I'll show you in just a second what some of the ensembles show, there could be some winter storm warnings. So it could be an interesting event, to say the least. Let's take a look now at the European, another really good model, and this is kind of where this is the model, because just looking at the Canadian and GFS, it's a maybe, right? It's a 50-50, but the European really kind of convinced me to make this video and warn about this potential storm, because it is more in line with what the Canadian shows, just maybe not as excited, but definitely more than a GFS. So again, we have that system, we have that precipitation. You can see starting to develop across Nebraska into Colorado. It doesn't show as much cold air, so a lot of that falls as rain, which we'll have to wait and see. It's really one of the few models that does that, which is why I'm kind of wondering if that's going to be accurate or not. I do think that it will be cold enough at this given time frame for a lot of that to be falling as snow. And notice it does show that precipitation, it does show that snow. Again, not as impressive as a Canadian because it just shows less cold air, and it doesn't bring as much into the panhandles, though it definitely shows the presence of snow. And this is what's interesting with the European. Look, it's really, out of all the models, it brings the most it brings the biggest kind of resemblance to a nor'easter out of all three of them. And you can see, let's see what it shows. It's not massive, but look, it shows a system that definitely is capable of producing snow. It just needs a bit of cold air, and it's almost there. Look at that, that's almost there. So again, whether or not the GFS continue, or the European continues showing that, what it does for these areas, we'll have to wait and see in the next kind of a few model runs, right? So interesting stuff. Western portions of Kansas and Nebraska could be seeing potentially, as you see right there, 8, 9 inches. That would be enough to issue a winter storm warning. Notice Denver could be picking up a few inches. Cheyenne, Wyoming, decent snowfall. The mountains of Colorado, 10, maybe a foot. And potentially, again, if more of the Canadian scenario were to come true, we could see several inches across the panhandles of Texas, including cities like Amarillo, Liberal, Oklahoma. It's a city. And notice that that's a second or third phase of that system could be showing the European. Shows what, like, that's almost, yeah, it's 8 inches for Boston. So it's definitely an interesting scenario and something we can't really disregard, as the models do show a potential for that. This was the model run prior, the European one. You can see it shows consistency. Nothing for the Northeast with the one at midnight. So again, that's more of a newer development. So that's interesting. This is the one even kind of 24 hours ago. You can see that's what it showed. This is the one day before that. So it showed more of a nor'easter, not so much here. So there's been a few trends, and we'll have to wait and see. However, I want to show you more models, because those are just a couple. Let's look at 51 models and ensembles. Let's see what they show. These are from the European family, and it's only up to 5 days. So it encompasses, if you will, only the first kind of fat half of this storm. And what I mean by that, so this stops at Wednesday 12Z, since it's 5 days, and I can't really make it specifically 7 or 6. It's either 5 or 15. So Wednesday, I think, how many hours? Yes, so this is approximately the timeline. Wednesday 12Z, Wednesday 12Z. This is approximately how far out the models go that I'll show you. So again, you can see that they do show, for the most part, a decent chunk of that storm, but not all of it. And if I were to put it out an additional few hours on a European, you can see that it does add on some snow. So these don't show the full extent of what will happen, but it's almost there, so I think it's good. Again, not all of them are excited. Some are more like the GFS, really showing nothing at all. And you can see there's a few of them, or at least, to say the least. But notice that the further we go out with these models, we get more that are more aggressive. This one, a bit more, right? This one shows some decent snowfall across Colorado, Wisconsin, sorry, Kansas. Look at this one, really amps it up, right? Quite a bit of snowfall. Same with this one, decent amounts. This one more reserved towards the mountains. That one's more aggressive. This one's decently aggressive. You know, let me just run these through, and you make your own kind of decisions on this. I don't know if okay, yeah, never mind. And then notice that as we push this forward, there's different many kind of scenarios, but definitely the European ones are definitely a bit more excited than the other models and the GFS ensembles, which don't really show at all. Especially look at this, we've had a string of like 6 or 7 right there that showed a pretty aggressive scenario of snow. And again, it's not the fullest of extent. This doesn't, if there were to be snow across the panhandles, these models right here won't be showing that because it's not far out in time. Look at this one, goes berserks. But again, there's some that are much quieter. So we'll have to see. Yeah, you saw there's a few aggressive ones like that. There's a few that's aggressive one, a bit less, and we'll just have to wait and see. Now, I could click on the 240, and this basically shows us the time of the snow. It doesn't show the snow up until 5 days, but I think it shows a snowfall between 5 and 15 days. So if I were to show you this, you could assume that's the kind of additional snow that would fall during this time frame. And let's keep it at 240. I don't know why this is switching. So okay, well, I guess this is being a pain in the butt. So this is look at this model, right? So this is what it shows additional to what it showed in the first 100. So this is what it showed in the first 120 hours, and this is what it shows kind of after that. You can see that's still a lot of additional snow right there. So again, tomorrow I'll be able to, I think, show you the 5-day snowfall with none of this kind of additional adding on. But you can see right there, additional snow across the panhandles. And then right there, boom, quite a bit more. This one shows across much of Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri. Look at this one. Boom. Shows something of that nature, which is rather interesting. And look at this one. Boom. So you see that there's a lot of these models that, again, show an aggressive scenario, even if they don't in the next couple of days, or in the first 5-day time frame, they show something of this nature. So very interesting, folks. We'll just have to wait and see. This is one of these things that, you know, sometimes there's a forecast which calls for a snowstorm. I make a video for, you know, several weeks or several days, like 5-6 days, and that snowstorm does eventually come through. This one may be, you know, I haven't made a video about it yesterday because there wasn't enough confidence. Today, there's a bit more, and we'll just have to wait and see. It might just sneak up on us, and there might be some sort of an event that actually is much more substantial than, you know, we think, and it might only show itself 3 to 4 days before its actual occurrence. And as you did see, some of them do drag that snow out pretty far into potentially even Iowa, Missouri. A lot of them don't, but then there are some that do, right? So we'll just have to wait and see. You can see these aren't really as excited, but look at that one. And so yeah, again, look at that one. That one shows a big northeast kind of side to that storm. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see, folks. And for now, that's pretty much all I wanted to show you. Now I want to show you one more model that you may or may not be familiar with, and this isn't really a model, but it's in a format of a model, and it shows us what the National Weather Service shows it, like, what's its forecast for the next 78 hours, and it kind of lays it out across the whole United States, which is nice because usually I just jump around from office to office showing you what snow may occur, but this is what it thinks will, you know, may fall, and this goes out to 78 hours. So obviously what it does show are some, you know, it shows that, oh, there's a potential for some snow, and it's definitely there. And usually, let me tell you that the National Weather Service is very cautious with putting out any snow beyond this time frame because well, again, it's further out. Usually the National Weather Service kind of makes snowfall forecasts for the next, you know, within the next 3 to 4 days, and especially with an event like this, I'm honestly surprised that they even mentioned a mention of snow as far out as they did. Now, if it were to occur, this system, right, and in this sort of nature, which we saw some of the more aggressive ones put, like even the European itself, the main kind of model, this would be much higher than 1 inch. It's just that they're cautiously showing that they're kind of leaning towards that scenario. So again, it's definitely not one of the scenarios that they're leaning towards where it just shows nothing like the GFS, which is why I think the GFS and its ensembles are a bit of an outlier in this case. So we'll have to wait and see, guys. This could be exciting, maybe not, but that's the whole point of weather and why it's fun, right? Thank you so much for watching, folks, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya. Bye.